Welcome to episode 126 of the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. Got an interesting one for you today. I'm not in the best mood. I'm sure most Ravens fans aren't in the best mood today. It was a bit tough to get out of bed this morning, but we did get to witness another classic Ravens-Steelers matchup. I think we can take comfort in that. For as much uncertainty and weirdness that 2020 has brought us, take comfort in the fact that this Ravens-Steelers game was something familiar and something we're very accustomed to. So I'm gonna lead with that and say that I was happy to see a really good game. Wish the Ravens would have come out on the other end, but from the big defensive plays, lead changes, a fight broke out, Big Ben faking an injury. This game had it all. This was classic Ravens-Steelers, and the latest thrilling chapter in a long storied rivalry. I'm assuming we're going to get something similar on Thanksgiving. We'll get into that later. Ravens definitely need to win that one, but start with that, Jake. This classic Ravens-Steelers, first time that Big Ben and Lamar are going head-to-head because he was out for most of last year. And on top of that, you have the Steelers coming in undefeated, Ravens with just one loss. Maybe you wish the weather was a little bit better, but this was a super anticipated matchup. And even though we're disappointed the Ravens lost, I think the game definitely lived up to the hype.
Yeah, it absolutely did. And, it just made it that much more frustrating turning on the Sunday night football game last night and seeing, two teams from by far the worst division in football go out there and the Cowboys tried out a third string quarterback that none of us had ever heard of before. And, even though the Ravens lost yesterday, I still would have, every single time would have much rather had that, be a prime time. I'm one of those people, I like to, I really actually like it when the Ravens don't have a 1:00 game, because that gives me the entire 1:00, all the craziness on Red Zone. And I will forever not understand why it seems like most weeks out of the NFL Sunday calendar, there's 10 games on at 1:00 and then they'll give us 2 or 3 at 4. I don't understand it. It frustrates me, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the Ravens and Steelers, but it's been a frustrating, I guess half day, you would say. So I was just kind of rambling on the other things that aggravate me. But yeah, I actually thought that I was happy that it was raining yesterday and the weather was kind of bad, because I thought that was going to hurt the Steelers and really benefit the Ravens and the style of play. And I think to a certain extent it did. I mean, they absolutely went crazy on the ground, 265 rushing yards. With that weather, you would expect the Ravens to do what they do and really stick to that ground game, especially when they don't have Mark Ingram. And I actually, I think it worked out well where they knew they had less options, less guys to feed the ball to, and they just held it to JK, and who actually doubled Gus Edwards, I believe his snap counter nearly did on Sunday, and just run loose. And we saw, he had well over 100 yards. I think Edwards was around 80 some, and then Jackson had 65 as well. But, not surprising that they decided to do that with what the game was presenting as far as weather and how they were going to have to go about this one. And really in most phases of the game, it was going well. The team was playing well. This was a good game. As far as the Ravens team goes, wasn't so good for Lamar though. And his 4 turnovers really was what caused the Ravens to lose this game here. Just him being very careless with the football. Should have, he lost the ball 2 times through the air and another 2 times with fumbling. And he also let the ball out additional times and it rolled out of bounds or what have you. But his mistakes and his ineffectiveness in giving the ball back to the Steelers and them capitalizing on it. I think they got 14 points off turnovers, but I could be wrong. That's what really did the Ravens in, and that can't happen going forward. And when we're going to be playing Indy with a good defense, Pittsburgh again, Tennessee. So pressure's on Lamar going forward. That was not a good showing yesterday, and yet another big game.
So yeah, the big story here is obviously Lamar played just a god-awful game. You look at the turnovers, 2 interceptions, could have had a third one. They ended up calling that one off. They said the ball hit the ground. Added 2 fumbles, could have added a third. You mentioned it. He was running in the open field, just flat out dropped the ball. And I was saying at that point in the game, after all the turnovers that had happened at that point, he gets in the open field and just drops the ball for no reason. I was like, what is going on right now? I looked at my dad. I said, I'm fed up with Lamar right now. I love him. He's the MVP. Still our quarterback, no question about it. But you're running in the open field and you just drop the ball without getting hit. I don't know what to say. It got to that point where it was getting ridiculous. Andrews had a reception down the sideline. He coughs up the football. I mean, ridiculous. Super undisciplined football, I'll say that. Not just from Lamar. I thought very undisciplined from a lot of other players as well. But he's the big story. He played very poorly. The 4 turnovers that we know of. The last one, I know he fumbled, but it was 4th down. He came up short. It's a turnover on downs anyway. That one doesn't carry as much weight as the other ones for me. But the point here is that you look at the final score, 28-24. You look at all the other bad stuff that happened to the Ravens in this game, and we'll definitely get into that, from the injuries to ejections to penalties, all of that stuff. After all of that, you lost by 4, so it's got to come back to the turnovers, especially when one was a pick 6, another one led to a touchdown because you set them up in the red zone, and then the third, the first fumble, the Ravens were in the red zone at the time, so that took away at least 3. But with the way that offense was rolling and running the ball, I'll say that took away at least 7 from the Ravens, or 6. So, you get rid of just one of these turnovers, I think the Ravens win this game, and that's even with all the other bad stuff that happened.
It's coming from, I don't know what conversations you've had with people, whether it's at the station or other Ravens fans, but I've talked to, not just you, but a handful of other Ravens fans, and there's a lot of frustration with Lamar right now. I'm not going to, name any names or give exact details of what was said, but there's a lot of concern about him and his ability. And I think the big game story kind of gets overplayed, but you have a game like that yesterday where you're fighting for first place in the AFC North. And I get that the weather was bad, but to be as careless with the football as he was, it's concerning to see that. And I'm in the same boat with you. I love Lamar. I'm glad they decided to go in a new direction. It was time, but I'm going to be honest. Like, I do have, long-term concerns about, his ability to win a championship. Like, it's only based on what I've seen so far. It's nothing against him and his character, which is all great. But I would be lying if I didn't share some of those same concerns. Obviously, plenty of time to fix it, correct it, and make up some ground. But man, they're really backing themselves into a corner right now.
Well, I think he's got a really great chance to win a Super Bowl in the immediate future, and it goes beyond him. It's just the fact that they've built this team as a whole right now. The talent on this roster is really, you can't compare it to any other team in the NFL on both sides of the football, offense and defense together. Throw in special teams for that matter. So they definitely have a great chance to win it all this year, next year, whatever it is. He's got to fix stuff, no doubt. This was as ugly as it gets. Some of his issues, and this is going to sound like I'm blaming it on other stuff, and I don't want that to be the case, because I think pretty much everything falls on his shoulders as far as those turnovers go. But we'll get into this here. Ronnie Stanley goes out. Tyree Phillips goes out. He got sacked 4 times in this game. I think he definitely should have gotten rid of the ball or escaped the pocket quicker than he did and avoided some of those sacks or avoided that one fumble. But let's be honest, he's been under duress at times this year. There's been games where the offensive line can't do anything, can't stop a nosebleed.
And that was with Ronnie Stanley.
Right.
Yeah, that was with Stanley too. And Um, I know I understand what you're saying because yesterday, I mean, they were just getting, I mean, times in the passing game just manhandled. But I think I heard some key stats in terms of Lamar's sake. Since week 2, he's got an 80% passer rating, somewhere around there. He's only completing just over half of his passes. I think it's at 55%. 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and all this is cumulative, leading to the 31st. They're still the best rushing offense in the NFL, but they're the only team that they are better at passing the ball at right now in terms of average yards per reception and total yards is the Jets. They're 31st. So, and then, that leads to, as we're also discussed, like Hollywood popping off on Twitter after the game, which I'm sure that John Harbaugh is just thrilled about that happening. But I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to throw some other additional numbers in there that are kind of, looking at Lamar's body of work throughout most of the season since week 2, which is when, he was still looking like his MVP form last season.
Right. And, he can definitely be a lot better. He doesn't have to be the MVP every year. We already established that, but he needs to be a lot better. And I think, based on everything we've seen from him in his short career so far, I have no reason to believe that he's not going to fix this. Everything we've been shown from him and he's shown us so far is that he has the ability to learn from his mistakes and get better. This year, we're seeing what some people would call a regression, but I don't know. How can you not trust him after the jump you saw from, half a rookie season to last year? The insane jump he took. And yes, it is the team around him, but man, I mean, I trust him. And he says after the game, turnovers are the reason we lost. That's on me. Owning up to it. That's really nothing surprising there. That's typical Lamar. It's little things. It's little things like escaping the pressure. I know it's not great when you got a guy in your face on every snap. And my God, if I had $1 for every time TJ Watt came untouched, unblocked on Sunday, we'd have enough money to cover Ronnie Stanley's signing bonus. It was insane. Touch him, get an arm, do something. Don't, of all people, you're going to let him come untouched. What are you doing? I mean, complete breakdown from the offensive line at times. Not totally surprising when you lose 2 starters. You got to plug in 2 guys. And now, Orlando's moving from the right side to the left side. It's not easy, I'll say that. But, oh my God, just the complete breakdown to not even, you see TJ Watt lined up right there. Of all people on that line, he's the one you key in on first. All right, who's got him? He came untouched at least 4 or 5 times in that game.
All the stuff we have to look forward to with DJ Fluker being our right tackle for the rest of the season.
He's okay. He's your plug-in guy. He's not Ronnie Stanley. We know that. He's not Orlando Brown. Not a starter for a reason, but you picked him up. He can play inside and he can play outside. If he stays healthy, it'll be good enough, hopefully. But to close up shop here on Lamar, we can all agree he can be better. One thing encouraging, didn't see much of that sidearmed BS and nonsense this week. Correct me if I'm wrong. More structurally correct, more fundamental throwing from him this week.
I mean, mechanically, I think, yeah, like there was less of the, not that he was looking like, Pat Mahomes back there in terms of comparing mechanics, but, the way that the ball was coming out, and I cut him a little bit of slack because of, the weather, but I did not notice the sidearm action. I mean, I think maybe that was something they really tried to hone in on during the bye week and just, it's never going to go away because he's a mobile quarterback and he's just going to make magical plays like that from time to time where he finds somebody down the sideline. He just kind of snags it with the sidearm. But in terms of how often he's doing it, I definitely think, yesterday was a very low amount compared to what we've seen so far throughout the season. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it was just kind of all signs pointed to them winning the game. I mean, they outpassed them 192 to 173. They had, on rushing first downs, they outdid them there 13-3. Outplayed them in terms of the amount of plays, 79-50. They won the time of possession battle by over 10 minutes. Like, they had a lot of parts to this game done, check the boxes in terms of things that often lead to a victory, with the exception being the turnover battle, which they lost in a big fashion yesterday. And it was just hands down, a factor and a result of the Lamar being careless with the football. He's only lost 5 games in the regular season as a starting quarterback. And a lot of the times, like, he's got 24, 25 wins, I think, there on the other side. And how many times last year were we saying that Lamar was such a big, reason of why they were winning, which kind of makes it strange yesterday when, you look at it and he's the main reason why they lost. So while that is not a positive, while that's a tough pill to swallow, especially against the undefeated Steelers team who you were trying to beat for first place in the AFC North, you will only hope that Lamar responds to this in a positive way. And, that's going to be an immediate test, because this Indianapolis defense is no slouch.
Right. And we did talk about that previewing the Steelers game, how much of a tall task this was going to be for the offense, a Ravens offense that was still trying to figure things out and start firing on all cylinders coming out of the bye. Your first test is the best defense in the league, the Steelers. So in a lot of ways, I think they accomplished figuring out some things. As far as the run game, I mean, my God, they were amazing on the ground. Without Mark Ingram, J.K. Dobbins went off 113 yards. He averaged 7.5 a carry. Gus Edwards was just perfect north-south runner, 5.4 for his average. And then Lamar ends up carrying it 16 times. How many of those were intentional? I mean, when you carry it 16 times, I think quite a few of them had to have been intentional. So, I mean, they were fantastic on the ground. I think you got to give credit to Greg Roman for sticking with it. That was a discussion a couple weeks ago. When you're rolling on the ground, can you stick with it? Well, hey, in the second half, I know when Lamar's turning the ball over all the time, it probably makes it a little bit easier to keep pounding the rock, but it's a close game coming down to the final drives, and they were running the ball. I mean, there was some drives there at the end of the game where they only threw the ball once or twice on the drive. They just ran the ball 7 times in a row, and the Steelers couldn't stop it. So I thought that was great. That was very encouraging against a really good defensive front that Pittsburgh has. I think that's a great sign that the run game got going. Lamar needs to be better, but if the run game's clicking like this, Lamar doesn't have to be, superstar throwing the ball left and right, slinging it around. He just needs to be a little bit better and eliminate the turnovers. So I thought that was a great sign. And one more thing on the offense here, as far as the receivers, because this pissed me off after the game, and we can throw in Hollywood's tweet. There seems to be this, I don't know where this is coming from, but I'm going to call it an uneducated take that I see from a lot of fans, that the Ravens have a game where they don't run the ball particularly well, or not as well as they should. We've seen that at times earlier this year, or they don't commit to the run and they don't stick with it. And everybody after the game is, oh, why aren't you running the ball? It's what you do well. You have 3 great running backs plus Lamar Jackson. Run the frickin' ball. Here we have a game. They carry it 47 times, 265 yards. And what are you hearing after the game? Boy, Dez Bryant can't get up to the active roster soon enough. We got terrible receivers. You can't pass the ball and run the ball 50 times each every game. You can go run heavy, or you can go pass heavy, or you can go with more of a balance. But when you run the ball 47 times and you run it well 47 times, you're not going to have that many pass attempts. And with that, there's not going to be as many targets for everybody. So I'm sorry. I don't see what you're griping about. And enough with this Dez Bryant stuff. Dez Bryant playing on Sunday, even if Dez Bryant is great, prime Dez Bryant, the Ravens don't win the game. I'm sorry, they don't. Dez Bryant isn't going to do anything. Shut up about Dez Bryant. No offense to him. But I'm sick of this, they need to go out and get another receiver. That'll fix it. What is it going to fix? I don't know. And the receivers, look at the balance here. Willie Snead gets targeted 7 times. He hauled in 5 of them for 100 yards, and he gets targeted on what could have been the game-winning touchdown. So if that upsets you...
He got destroyed, too. I was surprised he even got up. My God,
I know. He was upside down at one point. I mean, credit to Willie. He ended up racking up the 5, but
hell of a game.
He had a great game.
Hell of a game.
And even before that, when he had just 2 receptions in the game, they were both amazing receptions. He had the one where he caught it probably 10 yards short of the first down marker. No one was around him, but for him to get that right angle to get the first down, that's a veteran move by Willie Snead. And I mean, he played fantastic. And if you're upset that Willie Snead got more targets than Marquise Brown in this game, shut up. And Marquise, if you're actually upset about that and that wasn't just heat of the moment, if you're still stewing about that today, cry about it. I'm sorry. I love Hollywood, but that's nonsense. That's junk. Get it out of here. Don't turn into your cousin, for God's sakes, because, look, we know Lamar loves throwing you the ball. If you were open, I'm sure he would have threw you the ball. I'm sorry. If Willie Snead's open and he's going to haul in 5 of 7 for 106 and you got a problem with that, just go kick rocks. The problems with this offense, like I said, Lamar cuts out 1 or 2 of those turnovers. The Ravens win this game easily. I was happy with the receiving core. I thought they spread the ball around pretty well, even with a predominant rushing attack. I thought there's a lot of good that you could take away from the offense in this game. And as I said before, I trust Lamar more than anyone to correct these mistakes based on what we've seen so far in his career.
This team's got issues, and I don't know if you're seeing this, but just got a notification from Bleacher Report, and apparently Marlon Humphrey, per his Twitter account, has tested positive for the coronavirus.
Lovely. Great.
So he's out this week against the Colts.
The hits keep coming.
Yeah, and I know the Colts offense has been nothing special this year, but like this secondary is already razor thin. I haven't looked at any. I don't have Twitter. I'm just scrolling through Bleacher Report, but they're talking about the Ravens making a move for a guy in a secondary, which their secondary is razor thin now. And Jimmy Smith had that little Achilles issue last week. I don't. Nothing has happened. Maybe it's just a sore muscle, but the word Achilles always seems to catch your eye. And we can get your reaction to the Humphrey news here additionally. But when it's, going back to what you were saying, Willie Snead, like I kept saying, had a great game. He's not typically a guy that, goes over 100 yards, but he was making the plays yesterday. Hats off to him. In terms of Hollywood, we don't know if he was being double covered. We know that a lot of defenses, I mean, it's been laid out there for the public to listen to. I mean, there's certain defenses that say they know the ball is going to Andrews and Hollywood. So those are the first 2 guys that they're always looking to stop. In terms of what Hollywood said after the game, I mean, his cousin, he learned from the best as far as, if you had a novel of how to create drama after a game on social media, I mean, Antonio Brown wrote that book. I'm not, comparing Hollywood to his cousin, but I'm just saying that, there's a little bit of a background there, and you hope it doesn't turn into anything. I mean, hopefully either his agent or somebody close to him probably told him to take it down. That's probably what happened. I can't imagine Harbaugh's too happy about it, but I agree with everything you just said. I mean, their game plan yesterday was to run the ball, and good thing it was, because that's what they were good at. And if they hadn't run the ball as well as they were and putting even more pressure on Lamar, that game probably could have been a little bit more ugly than what it was. I mean, he was throwing 2 interceptions. Another one should have been picked. Who knows? He might have thrown 5 if they were passing it more. I don't know.
Yeah, the mood is completely changed here on my end. I don't want to say I'm freaking out, but what concerns me here is that it's not so much about Marlon. Obviously, the fact that one of your best players on the team, arguably your best defensive player, is not going to be available for this week. Based on what we've seen with some other teams this year that have gone through this, my concern is, do other people have it on the team, and what's the status of their Sunday game? Are the Ravens going to go through some BS like the the Titans, maybe not to the level of the Titans, but is the schedule going to have to get moved around? Are they going to be one of these teams that's playing a Tuesday game? Like, what's going to happen? My mind is going to the worst. It appears the Ravens are obviously going through the protocol. Everyone's getting tested again today. I'm assuming everyone went home today. But, man, this sucks because he's not going to play. So now Jimmy, which thankfully Jimmy, like you said, was a full go yesterday because he had some concerns throughout the week. He was on the injury report. It was listed as Achilles, of all things, not just, a tightness in the leg or whatever, but you list it as Achilles. That's typically not a word we hear unless we're talking about a full-on tear and season-ending injury. So it was just weird to see Achilles pop up every day.
He had a torn Achilles a few seasons ago.
Right, and we just know with him, he's had a lot of unfortunate injuries in his career besides that one that have derailed him from having great seasons. After you lost Anthony Averett, Tavon Young, it was so important for him to stay healthy, and credit to him for being a full go yesterday and making some big plays, by the way. The pressure's on now because it's him, it's Peters, and behind them, is it Terrell Bonds, who I thought played a garbage game yesterday? I'm not excited about that. I got concerns. I'm very concerned about the secondary.
It's you and me, Nolan. How's your cardiovascular shape? Are you? Can you get out there on Sunday? Can you travel with the team?
I might have to. Might have to try. This is not good. And the Colts aren't. Their offense. I know they just put up 41, but their offense doesn't scare me. I'll double down on that. Like Phil Rivers doesn't intimidate me in the way that other quarterbacks do. Maybe the Ravens can get through this one. I don't know. I didn't prepare to talk about this, so now it's just throwing me off. Now I'm in a bad mood. I'll let you go.
If Tyus Bowser or Malik Harrison gets the coronavirus, that's a loss that the Ravens can make it through in a game, and the loss isn't going to be so visibly clear. But without Marlon Humphrey and already this razor thin secondary that's kind of reminding me of 2014 now with all the injuries they've had. And it's kind of, it's frustrating because they've poured so many resources into the secondary. You talk about Ronnie Stanley getting lost for the year 2 days after signing. It's the frustration levels are extremely high. And whenever, all that's already going on, and then you get the word that Humphrey's got COVID, and not only what that means for him, but now the Ravens as a team, like you were saying, you hope it's just an isolated case. We've seen a couple of instances with other teams where it's just been one or two players and it doesn't really impact the schedule at all. That's certainly what you hope happens. I would assume at this point, it's still, we're even before noon here on Monday. So they're probably, if they're still at the facility, they're probably still going through some sort of testing or whatever.
So I guess the good news is that you find this out on Monday. You look at some of the other teams that have gone through this. They found this out later in the week, closer to game time. I think that bodes well for them, that they can still play this Sunday and everything will get sorted out by then. Obviously, you hope that nobody else on the team tests positive, because now that would be just worst case scenario. If it's, Humphrey's one of the worst players you could lose to it outside of probably Lamar. If he tested positive, that would just, I don't know what I would do. But
that's the next news we'll get. That's the next notification coming from Bleacher Report.
Bring it on. Who cares? It's all, oh my God. But anyway.
Well, hey, I mean, we would always joke about breaking news happening right after we got done recording. So, hey, at least even if it's bad, at least it's happening while we're recording and not immediately afterwards.
That's true. Let's get off of that. I want to clean up this Stanley stuff. After what happened on Friday, I was not expecting this to be the conversation we would have come Monday.
Yeah, that seems like a year ago already. The Stanley extension. I know, it was just 3 days ago.
Yeah. Not the conversation I thought we would be having today about Stanley, but here we are. Just like you said, there's really nothing to add besides what you said. He gets rolled up by T.J. Watt, and it just watching him hit the turf and he's slamming his fist into the ground and goes and grabs his right ankle, and right there he's done. That's it. I talked about it a couple weeks ago. We talk about Stanley possibly getting an extension. I said that he frustrates me when he has to miss a drive or a quarter or a half or a game with these little ticky-tack injuries. I want to make it clear that I don't classify this as anything close to that. He gets rolled up, he breaks his ankle or whatever the hell happened to him. That's different. It's a freak accident. He couldn't avoid it. It was coming from behind him. Even if it was coming right at him, it still doesn't make it okay or make it something that he could have avoided. It just sucks. And the only thing you can talk about now is where do they go? I thought it was interesting that they moved Orlando mid-game. Perhaps the fact that Stanley had to miss the Washington game, maybe that made that decision a little bit easier. Orlando got a full game there at left tackle. Maybe that made the decision much easier. Had that not happened, they probably still would have had it in the back of their head, but I don't know if they would have made that move mid-game because that's a big move to make. You go through a week of game planning, especially against this defensive line that the Steelers have and all their pass rushers and, again, T.J. Watt to bring him up again. To move Orlando Brown over, that's a big decision that has to be made, and they went with it. They rolled with it. Made no difference in the run game. I mean, the drive after he came out, was arguably their best drive of the game. So they had no issues creating rushing lanes without Stanley and Phillips, but pass protection certainly took a hit. That's not too surprising, but yeah, I mean, he's done for the year. You just hope that with the injury he'll be a full go by the time camp starts next year. But as far as players you can't afford to lose, Stanley's up there.
The offensive line, I mean, the fact of the matter is, I mean, with and without Stanley, they were not the same type of unit they were last year. I know that there's obviously going to be a drop-off without Stanley. But Orlando Brown's a decent tackle. I'm not saying he's going to be an all-pro left tackle like Ronnie Stanley, but I have confidence in him that he'll be able to be a starting caliber left tackle and, adjust his game. I mean, he's only, whether he stays with the Ravens or goes somewhere else, he's only going to hurt or help his market value if he shows that he can shift around to different parts of the offensive line. And obviously he was a left tackle in college, so he has experience playing that position. But the Stanley injury, I mean, I'm curious, and it's kind of funny because the focus has been taken off of the deal because he's now, not even a quarter into playing with that new deal, is now out for the season. And because I'm curious, like we were talking about the implications of signing Stanley long-term. And I guess, on face value, I wasn't expecting it. I mean, I honestly was expecting them to franchise tag him. And I don't even know if I expected them to re-sign him, but I thought about it after they made the deal official. And, it makes sense from the standpoint of he's one of their best players. I mean, you were talking about top losses that would hurt this team more than anything. I mean, Stanley's in the top 2 or 3, probably number 2 behind Lamar Jackson. So in terms of keeping one of their best players long-term and knowing that, assuming he's healthy, I mean, we know that he gets dinged up and can miss drives occasionally, but when Stanley's out there, he's one of the best left tackles in the game. So I think the Ravens will get some value out of this contract, and I do think it's a good deal from as far as keeping one of your offensive linemen here long term. And as negative as this injury is, I guess if there's one time for this a serious injury to happen to Stanley, and let's hope that this is the only like real season-ending one that he suffers during this contract. I mean, I guess it's a good thing that it's happening right off the bat, and you still know that you have 5 good seasons or seasons of Ronnie Stanley on your roster. He's going to be around, so that's a positive. But I'm curious to see what your thoughts were on the deal itself, just because I mean we were talking about it so much before it even happened, before the Humphrey deal even happened, of should the Ravens focus on Stanley, and it's a continuation of the Ravens doing their business in season, which I don't think is done.
So yeah, I agree with you, and it's hard to have this conversation, and it's unfortunate that I'm going to have to preface what I say because of this injury happening. The injury has no bearing on my opinion of this contract. I just want that out of the way right off the bat. It sucks that I even have to say that, but my feelings on Friday were I was surprised, first and foremost, because I think I texted you, what sort of blackmail does DaCosta have on these players that they're all signing for less than market-setting value? It was Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, and now Stanley. 3 huge contracts that get done mid-season, not even in the offseason. Mid-season deals, that's rare as it is. And then to have all 3 of them not be, market-setting value. Humphrey and Peters were both under what Jalen Ramsey got. Peters came before that deal, but still, at the time of his deal, he wasn't even market-setting. Stanley got less than Laramie Tunsil. I was convinced for sure he was going to get just as much, if not more. I don't hate the move because, like you said, he's clearly a great player, but it's sort of like, I don't want to say it's like the Mosley thing, but it sort of is. Like when you start talking about that much money, you can't hand out those kind of contracts left and right. Humphrey got one. Stanley got one. We know Lamar's going to get paid. What does that mean for Mark Andrews? What does that mean for Orlando Brown Jr.?
Let me ask you this, not to interrupt, but let's say Lamar has, in these big games, let's say he has another bad game against Tennessee. Let's say he has another bad game against Pittsburgh. Towards the end of the season, I mean, who they've got? They've got Cincinnati, but let's just say he's got, 2 or 3 more bad performances in big games this season, and add that on top of after what we've already seen. And let's say they make the playoffs. So let's say that, they squeak by into the playoffs as a 6 or 7 seed, but Lamar plays like crap in the playoff game. Are you still going to pay him? Are you going to give him $250 million?
Yeah, I don't think that's even a question.
Okay.
He won the MVP. I mean, it's not it. I know. I kind of know what you're saying, but
Cam Newton was an MVP once.
I know, but he also got derailed by injury. So the only thing standing in his way is, or I'm not saying that. Let me rephrase that. He's getting paid. It's already set in stone that he's getting paid unless he suffers an RG3-esque career-ending injury, something that gruesome. Unless that happens, he's getting paid. That's the direction the Ravens are going to go.
I guess my point is in terms of giving a quarterback hundreds of millions of dollars, I understand Lamar won the MVP, but you've got to build on it to a certain extent, not be this world beater MVP player every single season, but you've got to warrant me giving you $200-300 million. And for all the good that Lamar did last year, from what I've seen this year, I just don't know if I would be so ready to give him that type of deal. I'd have to see more. I have to see more before I'm ready to do that, to be honest. I mean, I know that Humphrey and Stanley are among the 2 or 3 best players in their position in the NFL. I don't know if I consider Lamar a top 5 quarterback this season. I mean, last year, definitely. This season, he'd probably be in the bottom of the top 10 in terms of quarterbacks for me this season. And that's concerning as far as giving him as much money as what I think they might be giving him. You know what I'm trying to say?
Right, but the issue is that what happened with Mahomes, what happened with Deshaun Watson, the Ravens can't wait until his rookie deal is up. The deal is if it's going to come, it's going to come in the next year. So they got to make up their mind, and I think their mind's already made up. I think it's a done deal. Unless he gets a serious injury, there's no question marks. And the big games thing, regular season doesn't matter to me. I mean, when we get to the playoffs, this team's making the playoffs. Unless the rest of the team gets hit by a bus, this team's going to win at least 10 games. I'll say they win at least 11, looking at their schedule. So they're going to be in the playoffs. Whether they host a playoff game or not, that's certainly up in the air. I mean, Pittsburgh's got a very easy schedule as well. So, winning the division, very much in question. Home playoff games, very much in question. But I think at this point, no one really cares about that. Let's just get to the playoffs and see what happens. Do they play better? Does Lamar play better than he did in 2018 and 2019? That's the question. And if they win a playoff game or two, they still come short of the Super Bowl, he's getting paid. I think even if he plays bad in the playoffs, he's probably still getting paid. It's a conversation I hope we don't have to have in the offseason, that they get bounced in the first game again. I really don't want to have that conversation, but we might. And I guess the only thing to say is that it's November 2nd and not January 2nd. So let's hold off. Last thing I want to talk about, because we had some unexpected stuff pop up. Defensively, I thought first half, the defense was lights out. They did force the one turnover. They kept that streak going. I don't know however many games it is in a row now, but a turnover they forced. Marcus Peters forced the fumble and recovered it himself. Great play by him. Roethlisberger looked off his game early in the first half. Even when he had time to throw, he was overthrowing guys. Just really ugly. They never got the run game going. Credit to the Ravens' defensive front. Shut down the run once again. Not surprised. Again, I feel like I brought that up every single week, how good this run defense has been. They shut it down again. James Conner was a non-factor. So I thought the defense was exceptional. Big Ben had his moment going into the half where he was, testing his arm on the sideline, making a grimacing face, and nothing needed to be said, at least in my household, watching that. My dad and I both just started laughing without even saying anything, watching that. And
you remember those assemblies for the school plays we used to go in high school? I bet Big Ben rocked those when he was in the drama club in high school. I bet he did a fantastic job.
It's just, how many times have we seen this story? I mean, we've seen it so many times now. He's not injured enough. It's Big Ben. It's just Big Ben being Big Ben. And you know what? I actually like it. It's come to be endearing at this point. It wouldn't be Ravens Steelers without it. The typical, I'm hurt, so I'm playing really bad right now. I think I'm hurt. If we lose this game and I play bad, it's because I was hurt. But if we come back and win, I'm a warrior and I'm the greatest player of all time. I'm the greatest quarterback of all time. That did end up being the case. He was testing his arm at the half. Obviously, the CBS crew, Jim Nantz and Romo were all over it. I don't know, Jim, is he good to go? It's really tough to throw when your throwing elbow is hurting you like that. Shut up. He's fine. He comes out in the second half, looks much better, leads the comeback. Typical Big Ben. Then nothing else needs to be said. But the only other thing I wanted to talk about here was the scrum that happened. Judon gets ejected. And then on top of that, 9 penalties on the day for the Ravens, 110 yards. Conversely, the Steelers, just 3 penalties for 30 yards. Clearly a disparity there. I think that definitely contributes to the loss. It's not the sole contributor by any means. I think we all have already established that the turnovers are the key point here, but does not help when you have 9 penalties for 110 yards, and I think, 3 of them were spot fouls on pass interference. That hurts a lot. I thought again, I'm going to preface this, the refs were not the reason the Ravens lost, but I'm already in a bad mood, so I'm just going to go ahead and rip them. Refs were garbage on Sunday. Terrible crew, terrible overall job. Some of these penalties were warranted. The Ravens clearly committed some of these penalties. I'm not denying that. But to have a disparity of 9-3, 110-30, it's ridiculous. The pass interference calls, absolute garbage. The first one on Peters, trash call. The ball's thrown 10 yards past him, and Peters got a hand on the guy's back. His arms are not restricted at all. Garbage call. I think every single pass interference call that was made on the Ravens defense, Big Ben threw the ball nowhere near the receiver. I know that doesn't have any impact on, the rule book, but it never ceases to frustrate me when you call pass interference on a ball that was never catchable to begin with. I know it's not in the rule book, but it pisses me off. And the last thing here that I thought that this crew just completely botched was the fight. Teams get chippy. The Ravens are on defense. They get a tackle for a loss, I believe. It was going to set up a 3rd and long. Humphrey, Peters get into it close to the sideline. There's some pushing and shoving. I think Peters got hit with the personal foul, unnecessary roughness. That was warranted. He headbutted the guy. The guy retaliated. That was warranted, unnecessary roughness as well. They ended up calling that offsetting penalties. Leave it at that. You could have called more offsetting penalties, other Ravens players, other Steelers players. It was a full-on scrum. If you're the ref, if you're the crew, you go into this scenario. It's a Ravens-Steelers game. 6-0 versus 5-1. There's a scrum. Break it up. Warn both of the head coaches. Issue offsetting penalties and get the game going again. Leave it at that. To insert yourself, to make that about you, which is what the ref did because Matt Judon accidentally touched you while he was getting into it with another player, and then you make that whole event that just transpired, you make it about you. That stupid old geezer of a ref gets accidentally bumped into, flops like a fish onto the ground, and then cries foul, throws a flag on Judon, and then they have to have a conference for 10 minutes on the field where they all pull out their little notebook and say, oh, what do we do here? You have to say to yourself before you make that decision, if we call this foul on him, he gets ejected. That's the rule book. Is this really something worth being ejected over? And if the answer is no, which the answer was no, by the way, if you needed any help figuring that out, pick up the flag, issue the warnings, tell the coaches to clean it up, and move on. It's Ravens Steelers. Don't make it about you. And one last thing, the Ravens PR team forcing him to make a statement after the game, to issue a written statement apologizing, that's almost more embarrassing than the loss.
Well, that's the world. That's the world we live in now, though.
Judon, I wish Judon would have had a press conference after the game to say how he truly felt, which was probably screw that ref for making it about him. I clearly wasn't going after him, but I'm done. I'm clearly riled up about a lot of stuff here, but that was just the cherry on top. Not the reason they lost, but my God, did that crew just suck yesterday.
Oh, yeah, they were horrible. It always gets me when they still throw the pass interference calls, like you were saying, on balls that are, in the next county over from where the receiver is. If the defender is clearly impacting the receiver's ability to catch the ball, regardless of what was happening right when the play started or at the line of scrimmage. I mean, if the ball was as far away from the receiver as what we saw yesterday, I know they're going to throw the flag, but they shouldn't. And that's the unfortunate thing. That's one of the things about football that drives me absolutely insane, despite how I love it so much. If I had to change one thing about the way the current game is played, it would definitely be to fall back and readjust some of the pass interference calls and the way they've laid them out, just because they're just absolutely ridiculous and way too easy to get nowadays. We could do an entire podcast on that, to be honest. But and I also, I agree with you 100% that Judon should not have been ejected. I agree that it was a bogus call from the refs 100%. But just like the refs do, it doesn't matter how far the ball is, if there's still, the receiver and the cornerback are touching each other, and as to the effect that they were with Peters' hand on the back of the guy's jersey, if there's any contact there, doesn't matter if it's BS or not, they're going to throw the flag. And the same thing goes for Judon getting ejected. He shouldn't have been. But the fact is, when a player strikes an official, it doesn't matter if they, flat out clock him in the skull, or if they accidentally brush up against them, if they, give them a light tap with their hand after a call. If they come in any sort of contact, they're getting ejected, which is BS. It's stupid. I agree with you 100%. There was no way, looking back at the replay, that Judon meant to touch the official or have anything happen between him and the official or knock the guy to the ground. Doesn't matter if it was intentional. The fact of the matter is he still touched him. And when you touch him, you get to sit the rest of the game in the locker room. And yeah, especially with Ngakwe's first game with the Ravens and see Judon getting ejected, some fans that aren't, as smart as we are and don't, understand football, they're going to go along with the storyline of, just another reason not to pay Judon. But that one, that one wasn't on him. not at all. Should have stayed in the game. Not intentional. No malice whatsoever. But touching an official is a big no-no, and he technically violated that rule, and it is what it is. But I felt for him because I there's nothing he could have done to plead his case or make it any better. Once it happened, there's no changing what they're going to do. Just another. It's like we complain about the unwritten rules of baseball a lot. That's kind of something in football that drives me insane.
Have some willingness to add context when you're making that call. Like, I get the rule book says if you make contact with the ref, they can hit you with that. And that's what happened. And there was a little bit of violence behind the swipe because he was going at another guy. It's not like he just bumped into him on accident when they were walking across the field after a play. I can see why they made the call. But again, it's something that if you're that ref, if you're the crew chief, you got to say, well, hold on a second. Is this really something we want to eject the guy over in a Ravens-Steelers game? And you dial it back a little bit. So I stand by what I said. And, I had this in my notes. It needs to be said. Ref crew, say what you want about the final play, whether it was pass interference or not. That doesn't bother me. But not adding time to the clock and just making the Ravens have one last play with 8 seconds, even though you took at least, 5, 6, 7 seconds to finally blow the whistle when the Steelers player was injured on the other side of the field. Should have added time to the clock. Ravens maybe could have had 2 strikes at the end zone. They only had 1. It is what it is. And then at the end of the first half, J.K. Dobbins had a really big gain where he ended up getting out of bounds, and they blew the whistle early and said that his forward progress had been stopped in bounds. They couldn't stop him at all. He could have kept churning his legs all the way to the end zone. Their defense was so gassed they couldn't stop him. He gets out of bounds. Fantastic play by Dobbins, and they blow the whistle early. Let's move on. Next week, can't come soon enough. Ravens and Colts, real quick. How are you feeling about this game? Obviously, a lot has changed now with Humphrey. If anyone else goes out, that will definitely affect things. So I'm not going to give a score. I would like to think that the Ravens are going to win, that they bounce back after a tough division loss. They bounce back with a win. I know it's a road game. I know the Colts are 5-2 as well, but I don't think they're as good of a team. Phil Rivers doesn't scare me, like I said. Their defense is solid, but I just don't know if they can score with the Ravens. I think the Ravens offense will put up some points, and I just don't know if Phil Rivers can match that. So, especially against this Ravens defense, with or without Marlon Humphrey, the pass rush is still going to be there. We know that. Judon will play, and you got Yannick coming into a second game with the Ravens.
Yeah, this is a tough one. The Colts are probably one of the more quiet 5-2 teams, just because. You're right. They've played a lot of ugly football, and I do think that if their defense, hadn't been helping them out a lot, I do think that it could be a lot worse for Phillip Rivers' new squad. Also, another interesting layer to this game to couple along with all of the bad stuff going on with the Ravens right now is the fact that the Ravens have never won a game in Indianapolis. I think the last time they were there was 2014, which actually they made the playoffs that year. That was one of their losses still during the Joe Flacco era there, but including the postseason, they've never been victorious in Indianapolis. I almost kind of want to pick the Colts just to ride the wave of misery right now and just say the sky is falling and all that stuff. But I don't know. I think the Ravens will respond. I think that they're going to be very frustrated about how they played the Steelers yesterday in such a big game. But yeah, there's a lot running against them right now. That Colts front going up against the Ravens offensive line without Ronnie Stanley now, it's probably going to be it might be a low scoring game, to be honest. An ugly game, but I think the Ravens win ugly. This is, you don't want to use the term must-win game because the Ravens are 5-2, but they're already 2 games behind Pittsburgh, and the rest of their schedule is, aside from the Ravens and playing Buffalo, is pretty much cake. So I think in terms of keeping right on the Steelers, I get 2 games, they're not right on their tails, but in terms of keeping a respectable shot still at winning the AFC North and giving the Steelers a run for their money. This is a pretty big, crucial game for them now to keep that pace going. So I'll pick the Ravens here. It's Monday, but we still have injuries to go through in the week and a week of practice. But I'll say 23-20 Ravens, ugly game that they win at the end on a Justin Tucker field goal or something like that. But it's I think this one's going to be another stressful game, and I wasn't expecting that at the beginning or a couple weeks ago to say that, but it's just kind of the way the dominoes have fallen now. So I'll still pick the Ravens, but I'm not feeling great about it.
Yeah, I don't have a score. As it stands now, I think the Ravens win, even knowing this Marlon Humphrey news. But if more develops later today, throughout the week, other guys have tested positive, that might change. But as it stands right now at 12:30 p.m. on Monday, I think the Ravens win. That's episode 126. Had way more than we bargained for there. We were already going to have a depressing conversation about Lamar, about Stanley, about the refs, about everything. And then you throw in the Marlon Humphrey news. So that was rough. If you made it through, congrats to you. We appreciate you for listening as always. We'll be here next week, 127. Hopefully a Ravens win. We'll talk to you then.